Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I'm here to talk about yet another season of The Golden Bachelorette.
Super excited, I can see.
Look, it's been a long day. As everyone can see, we are unfortunately yet again having to film remote. We hate filming remote, but Amy has to be down in Miami to run the business down there, and I am stuck up in Connecticut running some stuff up here. So we got this announcement the day that you actually flew out. So we were unfortunately unable to record until now. We have not talked at all about the announcement. So before we do any spoilers or anything like that, just give me the real quick 30-second. How did you feel about the announcement? Forget about let's not bury the lead yet or anything like that. Just when you heard the announcement, you heard who it was, gut reaction, first feeling.
First feeling was bummed.
Interesting. Okay. I was disappointed, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I needed a little bit of time to really think about why I was disappointed. And we could talk about that and get into it in a little bit here. I don't think the selection was a bad selection. I think as I've gotten a little bit of time to reflect on why I felt a little disappointed, I think it can be summarized pretty quickly in the safe, boring choice. And there's nothing wrong with safe and boring. Some might say that you married me because I'm the safe, boring choice. And so sometimes it works for you. This time, I think it's going to be a fine season, but I wasn't jazzed up. And I wonder how much of that is coming on the back of the Jen announcement as our Bachelorette in this upcoming season after Joey's season, where we both really, really like Jen, but as the Bachelorette, we have concerns about her ability to carry a season. And so it kind of felt like a weak choice for Bachelorette. And now we're kind of getting the safe choice. This is on the back of Golden Bachelor, which was a fantastic season, and Joey, who's perhaps the best Bachelor of all time. So I think that's kind of where my initial kind of thoughts and reactions were. But before we get too much deeper into it, why don't you tell the people what we're actually doing here? What's the channel about?
So if you're new here or if you need a little refresher because we've been on a break, Reactivity TV is where I give my therapist take on all things reality TV, and where Chris, as my husband, non-therapist, and I talk about relationship dynamics, what we can learn and glean from the dynamics that we see on reality TV, because there is a lot of parallel and a lot of overlap, and it's a really interesting window into motivations, into choice, into, again, relationships. So I think we have a lot of fun here, sharing our insights and our observations about what we see on TV.
And most importantly to note right off the bat, what are we not?
We are not a news outlet, a Bachelor news outlet. And that might feel a little contradictory because we are here talking about Bachelor news.
All right, so now that everybody knows what we're doing here, what we're talking about, let's get into the announcement. And Golden Bachelorette number 1 is, drumroll,
Joan Vassos. So Joan, she's it. She's the one. She's our leading golden lady.
I think from pretty much any objective standard of beauty, she was the most beautiful of the, there was 16? I think it was 16 Golden Bachelorette contestants, right? Beautiful woman, very sweet. She had a lot of parallels to Gary's story. She had lost a spouse as well, somewhat recently. I don't remember exactly how long it was. She ended up self-eliminating early to go and deal with some family matters. Her daughter had, I believe it was 15 or 16. It was like 2 or 3 weeks prior to the season. She had given birth, and she kind of needed to go after episode 3, I think it was, had to go and self-eliminate to go home and be a mom. She had in her short time on the show and the limited amount of screen time that she had, a couple of real poignant points, and she got a lot of just really kind of deep sentiments that were brought about, or that she had stated. And then she had a pretty decent, what do they call it, the after the final rose, or the women tell all. She had a pretty decent time on the couch, where we got to see a little bit more of her, and she got to kind of explain some of her situation, or with respect to the show, and how she experienced Gary and whatnot. It felt to me like most of the commentary around who was going to be selected, she was always a leading candidate. A lot of people were really pushing for her to be it. I get it. I think from a story and a narrative perspective, it makes a lot of sense. But I think also that's why I come about with this being sort of a safe choice.
So as I said, my first impression when I heard who was announced was bummed. And I couldn't really quite figure out why I was bummed. I was trying to think, is it because there's someone else I would rather it be? And then I started racking my brain and thought about who I might want to see. The obvious choices are Faith or Leslie, kind of the runners up that had gone later in the season. And I don't think it's that. I don't think I was looking for one of those women to have any sort of kind of like redemption arc kind of stories. I think I similarly was a little bit concerned about whether or not Joan could carry a show. I think in just having like again now a distant memory of Joan, because to your point, she self-eliminated in week 3. We didn't really get to know her. I think I had concerns about, again, do we know enough about her in order to build an entire like season off of her? And is she authentic? Is she authentic enough to be the lead? That was Joey's selling point. That is what made Joey so likable. And I feel like I am now craving that and expecting that of a lead. And I think I had like these concerns around, like, I don't know if Joan could be that. And I wonder if there's someone better that could be the lead. And so I kind of sat with that for a bit. And I, again, couldn't quite wrap my brain around like why I was having this feeling of discontent. I went back and watched week 3 of season 1 of Golden Bachelor, where Joan had won the date with Gary, gone on the date with Gary, and self-eliminated. So it was like a very Joan-centric episode. And it kind of put me at ease some, because I was reminded a lot of Joan and why I found her so endearing. And that was the episode that I cried when we were reviewing it, and I got tearful again watching it. And so I know I'm going on and on here, but all of this to say, I feel like while there is a predictability around Joan being chosen, I really hope that she can bring some authenticity to the role. I still have concerns about that, but I feel like she has done enough on her short time on the show to feel like, okay, I'm interested. I'm interested in knowing more about her. We got a little appetizer, a little taste of her, and I am curious enough to want to know more. And maybe that's where there is some benefit to having someone that we didn't really get to know that much.
I don't think she lacks in authenticity. I think that actually that's probably, for me, one of the stronger pieces of it all. I think it's going to be a very interesting contrast when we look at her versus Jen, and it's not really fair to compare in many ways, but they're both bachelorettes. Jen is coming in and she's going to be the shot o'clock bachelorette, which I am wondering how that's going to land. I'm not sure that is going to be as exciting as I think production thinks it's going to be. And I do think it's going to be a nice contrast to bookend that with somebody more like Joan. And so the more I think about it, the more I'm on board. And with the Joan pick, I think I would be less on board with the Joan pick if we were getting a different Bachelorette. But you know, all that aside, so let's get into Jones specifically. If you're production, let's start with like casting. They have not finished casting. They might not have even started casting. How are you as a producer casting for her match?
I think casting's going to be incredibly difficult.
Impossible.
Incredibly difficult. um, so I'll just start there. I think it's made even more difficult, and maybe this is shallow of me, but I think it's made even more difficult by the fact that Joan is such a gorgeous woman that, like, who wouldn't want to date her? I want to date her. She's beautiful. So she is like this very eligible bachelorette. And so I feel like you're gonna get like the troves of men, you know, because I think she is in so many ways a catch. And so I think it's going to be really difficult to cast because there's going to be a lot of men. And I think that, like, listen, we look at Gary. Gary had one thing come out about him, one thing, and he is villainized. All people can say about Gary is that he is like a money grubber,
money grubber and a love bomber. Yeah.
based on one article from one unnamed source, and he is, America's grandpa has fallen kind of thing. It's become his whole narrative. And so, like, how are they going to find men, 16 men that
you're dead. We've talked about this in past episodes. We are living in a period of time where there is a lack of grace for who people were, and we are viewing things through a societal realm of right now, ignoring the fact that there have been multiple regimes, social regimes prior to this, where different behaviors were acceptable and different opinions were acceptable. And if you're going to try and get people who have been on this earth for 6 or 7 decades, and you think that you aren't going to be able to find something they said, something they did, good luck. It is an impossible task, and I expect that we're just going to get hit piece after hit piece after hit piece all season, and that actually might be the real entertainment of the season, is finding and watching all these things unfold and saying, like, okay, what are people digging up about Grandpa now? And the thing I will remind people right off the bat is, if you do that digging on your father or your grandfather or your grandmother or your mother, you will also find a lot of these same things. So before you start casting stones, remember, they're products of their age, not products of the current social, regime. But I think that's what we're going to be in for. And I think it's going to, in some ways, be a little bit interesting and kind of fun to watch. I think that actually could be more interesting than anything Joan brings to the table.
Yes.
Does that make sense? And that's taking nothing away from Joan.
I totally agree with you. The one thing that you and I were talking about a bit before, when we were chatting earlier, is that, as the regular franchise goes, The Bachelor is really all about the women and the drama of the women, and The Bachelorette is about the Bachelorette, because the men typically, like, aren't very drama filled. They typically have these bromances, and one of the big, almost like it was a mix of a disappointment, but also people loved the fact that the women of the Golden Bachelor were so wonderful and supportive of one another. And it was lovely. They formed these great relationships. And I have a feeling that it's going to flip-flop the typical franchise, just to your point, that I do think that this season, with a bunch of, like, men who kind of lack a self-awareness, will probably just they will be the show, and Joan will, in a sense, be a bit of a blank slate that they can project onto, in a way where we're going to kind of probably see things that we're gonna feel really comfortable making fun of. And I think that we will feel comfortable making fun of them because white men in their 60s are probably the easiest, safest group to make fun of right now.
They're literally the only group that you can make fun of. So yeah,
So all of that to say, what would make a good partner for Joan? It's a little too tough to tell most specifically because again we don't really know her. But to your point earlier, Joan is very family oriented, family first. We saw that she takes her role of a mother very seriously, and so we are either going to need to see um, a man who has a very similar value, and or a man that can appreciate that value of family, and probably is willing to move close by where Joan lives.
So what are we looking for in terms of the men? Like what if you're in Joan's seat, give me the top qualities other than proximity to you. What are we looking for in a 60 or 70-year-old eligible bachelor?
Well, so Joan, as you alluded to, she was married to her significant other for a very long time. At the time of the recording of episode 3, when Joan went home, her husband had been dead for 2.5 years. So she was someone that was in a long-term relationship for a really long time. And so I think it's going to be helpful to find a partner that shows the ability to maintain a long-term relationship, not necessarily, a lifetime long relationship, but like has commitment, has family. Again, the family value is strong. She identifies so strongly with being a mother and her role as a mother and what that means and what family means to her. And so I know I keep coming back to that, but I think again, like the longevity in relationship and respect for the value of family is probably going to be key. I also think just doing a teeny bit of, following of Joan showing up on my For You page. Like Joan isn't shy about putting herself out there on social media. She's doing all these cute little outfit transition videos, and so probably someone that is comfortable with that and also likes to put themselves out there too. Can be a little bit goofy. That's been kind of a fun thing to see Joan do is she puts herself out there. And so having a partner that either can do that with her or can be a supporting cast. I think in some relationships, there is the star and there is the supporting act, and maybe you switch places. But I think having a partner that can let Joan be the star, I think is also going to be important.
Mm-hmm. So next question is, what are the red flags? Joan's going to be having to navigate her way through 16 or more men. We think we'll see what production can come up with for a cast. What are the red flags? What are you, if you're in her shoes, looking out for? What are you, noting as a potential problem? This could be personality quirks. This could be,
sure.
Behaviors.
Well, I don't know if this is maybe so much about the men. It is, but I think it's also about Joan. So Joan is famously known now for talking about how as women age, they become more and more invisible. And that part of being on the Golden Bachelor and having a date with Gary, it healed her a little bit because it helped her recognize that it could still be seen, that she, is still a whole person, despite, aging and being a mom and having these other roles. And so one thing that I would really want Joan to look out for is how much she was getting filled up on external validation from these men, how much weight she was putting in to words, of people just, telling her how wonderful she is or how beautiful she is. Like, because I think if you are in a season of life, or, that that stuff maybe holds a little bit more weight. And if you are feeling, I know for me, like when I'm feeling more insecure, or if I'm just not feeling myself, or if I'm having like trouble with the idea that like everybody feels like they're getting younger and I'm getting older, that I'm definitely a little bit more um, seeking of just affirmation in some way. But that would be one thing that I would want Joan to be paying attention to, because she's going to get a lot of that from these men, of a lot of compliments, potentially like love bomby type stuff. And so I would want Joan to really be discerning about who these men are, and forming true deep connections with them, getting to know them, and not just taking what they're telling her, or about their feelings for her at face value. And I think, like, again, to kind of compare it to Gary, my biggest criticism of Gary was that he was so selfish, and he just focused on the way that women made him feel.
Mhm.
And he missed opportunities to actually form deep connections with these women. And so I guess that was my long-winded way of saying I would want Joan to be mindful of that too, because I think she's vulnerable to fall into that trap. I just like forgot some of the ridiculousness of Gary when I was rewatching the show, because this was the episode that he said two things. One, when Joan was telling him that she was leaving, he was like, I'm so disappointed. I woke up and I was dancing out of bed this morning. And this is also the episode that he said he jumped out of bed, and you had said 2 feet on the ground, Gary.
That is, yeah.
But it's, those like like hyperbolic statements that Gary would
Mhm.
make, that are just so ridiculous.
Yep. All right. So before we get out of here, then give me your final thoughts.
Okay.
You still disappointed with
No.
Joan, or we think we've talked ourselves up to at least ambivalence.
No, I'm beyond ambivalence. I like Joan. I'm looking forward to her season. I think it will be entertaining. I don't know what kind of bachelorette she's going to be. But I like her. She made me feel something, and so I appreciate that about her. And I hope she brings that kind of vulnerability and honesty to her season. And, she's a mom of some grown kids. I'm sure she can, keep these men in line. So, I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be a really fun season. I really do. What about you?
Yeah, I've come off the bottom from my initial reaction, especially as I think more about the contrast between her and Jen and the back-to-back seasons we're going to get. And the more I think about the men and how this, I think, is really much more focused on the men. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting sort of comedy there. I'm in. We're going to see what happens. But the golden part of this series, or this of this franchise, there's a lot of demand for it. It brought in a lot of new viewers, and so I'm very intrigued to see how it plays out and how it develops. And who knows? Maybe in a year or two, we're gonna get a 40s and 50s, a middle age,
Like a millennial.
bachelorette. No, millennials are not 50 years old.
In a few years, 40 to 50, sweetheart, you are in your 40s. I hate to break it to you. And you're a
I'm not a
millennial.
millennial. I'm a zennial. I'm a zennial.
You're a millennial. I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm a zennial.
Love that you're like, yeah, I guess I'm in. I'm also sorry to break it to you that, yeah, whether you want to or not, coming this fall, you will be back here with me talking all about Joan's season of the Golden Bachelorette. So let's try to not act so surprised, because I'm giving you forewarning. You have a 6-month prep time to get mentally ready for the fact that you're locked in here.
Is there one of those pod shows between now and then?
A pod show?
Yeah, what was that pod show?
Oh,
We
Love is
saw it.
Blind.
Yeah, is there one of them between now and then?
Don't think so. You know
Alright.
what just came out
What?
today? Bridgerton season 4.
No.
Well, as you all can see,
Out.
Chris and I are sort of struggling with what to do between now and Gen season, which is airing the beginning of July 8th, I believe. Still, we're kind of uninspired in terms of what's currently on TV. So we would love to hear from you all about what you might want us to talk about, what shows you think it might be interesting for us to watch and hear our opinions on. So please drop that in the comments below. We have missed you, by the way, to our audience, and we're happy to be back here with you. And we want to come back more frequently. We want to come back between now and July. So just let us know what you're watching. Maybe we can watch along with you too. But we will definitely be back at the beginning of July for Gen season of The Bachelorette. Until then, you can follow along with us on Instagram at ReactivityTV. You can email us at reactivitytv@revivecfw.com. You can, of course, keep those comments, those likes, those subscribes coming. We are still trying to hit those 1,000 subscribers. So any help that you can give us to that end would be appreciated. We will be back soon with more, and we'll see you all soon.
Did you happen to see the calendar? We're filming episodes 3 and 4 in Mexico.
All right. Adios.
Me and my sombrero. Adios, everybody. See you in a couple months.
Bye.